The prince looked toward Jack White. "Well, how are things progressing on your side?" Jack White nodded calmly. "The crime families have been brought into the plan just as we discussed. They've likely already begun printing the currency and distributing it through their usual channels. So far, I don't foresee any major complications. Nothing that should be catastrophic to the plan." The prince nodded before turning his attention toward O'Reilly. "And on your side, how are things progressing?" O'Reilly replied calmly. "Everything is proceeding according to plan on my side as well. The factories have been infiltrated. Selling faulty ammunition directly wasn't a viable option, so we chose a different approach. The ammunition, the cannons, and several other pieces of equipment will eventually experience technical difficulties." He gave a faint smile. "As for the rest, when the uprisings begin, a few factories inside the Kadrasar Empire will prove far more vulnerable than they appear, especially certain key facilities." The prince leaned back slightly. "That may be true, but remember one thing. No plan has ever survived the battlefield exactly as intended." His gaze moved between both men. "I assume each of you has prepared contingencies in case things do not unfold the way you expect." Both men nodded. O'Reilly spoke first. "That goes without saying. To be honest, most of our plans have worked remarkably well so far, and based on the intelligence we've gathered, they have no idea what we're doing." The prince nodded. "Good. That is exactly how we want it to keep it. After all, how do you fight an enemy you don't even know exists?" His attention returned to Jack. "How long before enough currency is in circulation to create panic? How long before the Kadrasar Empire begins to feel the effects?" Jack considered the question briefly. "At the current rate, approximately a year, perhaps a little less if everything continues smoothly. But I may have found a way to accelerate the process." The prince raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Jack folded his hands together. "At first, I thought those earlier attempts had no real value. The plates weren't as precise as I wanted them to be, and the machinery we used in the beginning was far from perfect. We improved everything through trial and error, but I've realized something important. Those earlier versions still have value." The prince listened closely. Jack continued. "Not as finished products, but as something that can be used indirectly. If they end up in the wrong hands, or even the right hands by accident, criminals, opportunists, people with enough creativity, they will begin producing copies themselves, and that creates a second layer of circulation, less perfect, less controlled, but highly effective at spreading uncertainty." He paused briefly. "The paper was never the issue. The machinery can be controlled. The plates were the most delicate part to perfect. But the ink, that was the real difficulty." He leaned slightly forward. "And this is where the opportunity lies. If human nature does what it always does, if criminals act like criminals, they will amplify the panic for us, and we won't need to intervene directly. No trace leading back to us, nothing." The prince studied him for a moment. "I take it you are confident you can execute this?" Jack gave a small nod. "Yes. Just make people feel as though they've either earned it or that it was simple luck that brought it to them. Once that belief spreads, they'll do the rest themselves." The prince gave a faint smile. "Interesting. I suppose you are right to a certain extent. Keep me informed on what is happening." Jack nodded once. "Of course." The prince stood. "For now, I believe that's all. O'Reilly, you may leave shortly. And Jack, you as well. But before you go, he looked toward O'Reilly. The men you requested have been gathered. They are ready whenever you require them. Then he turned toward Jack. And the people I suggested for your operations have also been recruited. Simply notify me when you need them. Jack nodded. Understood. The prince paused briefly. There is one more matter. His gaze settled on Jack. I may have a task for you in the near future, one that depends on information I am still gathering. It would not be pleasant work, and it may require you to deal with someone directly. Jack looked at him. What does it involve? The prince considered for a moment. For now, I cannot say with certainty, but if my suspicions are correct, I will need someone removed, someone responsible for a considerable amount of cruelty. When the time comes, I do not believe you will hesitate. Jack nodded once. I'll reserve judgment until I have the facts. A wise answer. The prince's expression softened slightly. For now, I need confirmation before I proceed. He glanced between both men. So, is there anything either of you require from me? Information, resources, assistance? Jack remained silent for a moment. Then he asked, out of curiosity, the king you mentioned earlier, the one who lost his head, what ultimately caused his downfall? The prince leaned back slightly. He violated the first rule of leadership. Never become cruel to those who have been loyal to you. A quiet stillness settled in the room. He continued, a ruler can survive many enemies, but once his loyal supporters begin questioning their loyalty, his downfall has already begun. The king became cruel to those who had faithfully served him, to his subjects, to his supporters, to those who stood beside him, and that shift triggered something irreversible. Once that question takes root, why are we still loyal? It spreads quickly. It does not need coordination. It only needs awareness. Jack nodded slowly. And power changes hands. Exactly. The prince spoke more calmly now. Fear can control people for a time, but eventually they stop fearing consequences. They begin hoping someone will act, and sooner or later, someone does. In that king's case, one man decided enough was enough. He removed the king's head, not for reward, but because he believed the world would be better without him. The room remained quiet for a moment. Then the prince concluded, that is why power must be understood, not worshipped, not abused. Understood. The prince stood and began walking toward the door. As for the two of you, you are useful because of your expertise. There will always be new threats, new challenges, new problems, and rulers will always require capable advisors to help handle them. A short while later, the meeting finally concluded. The three men exited together. The prince walked alongside Jack White and O'Reilly through the hallway. The estate remained quiet around them. Large windows overlooked the ocean beyond the cliffs, allowing sunlight to spill across the polished wooden floors. Servants moved discreetly through the halls, while paintings and carefully crafted furnishings reflected the wealth of generations without appearing overly extravagant. As they walked, the prince suddenly spoke again. Out of curiosity, Jack, I would like your opinion on something. Jack glanced toward him. What is the question? The prince replied calmly. I've been destroying portions of Concordine's currency, burning it, reducing it to ash. What is your opinion of that decision? Jack considered the question briefly, then nodded. It's a clever move. If fear eventually spreads regarding counterfeit currency, reducing the amount of genuine currency in circulation gives you greater control over the situation. It also creates a reserve, a safeguard. If confidence in the currency is ever damaged, you already have a means of responding." The prince smiled faintly. "Good. That was my conclusion as well, but I wanted another opinion." He then looked between both men. "If either of you identifies effective countermeasures against future problems, notify me immediately. The same applies to both of you." Both Jack and O'Reilly nodded. "Of course." The prince then said, "Well, it was good meeting with the two of you. Now, I take it there are other matters you would both like to attend to." Both men nodded. As they turned to leave, the older man who had entered earlier alongside the prince suddenly stepped forward. He leaned close and whispered something into the prince's ear. The prince's expression immediately changed. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he looked toward Jack. "Jack, come here." Jack stopped and walked back over. The prince waited until O'Reilly had moved a short distance away before speaking. "It seems everything I feared may have been correct, so it appears I will need you to handle that matter after all, the one I mentioned earlier, the one that might require you to get your hands dirty." Jack remained silent. The prince continued, "If you would be so kind as to wait a few moments, I'll have all the information gathered for you." He paused, then added, "And Jack, I need this handled in your unique way. No witnesses, no loose ends, and most importantly, nothing that can ever be traced back to us." Jack simply nodded. "I understand." The prince gave a satisfied nod. "Good." He then turned and disappeared back into the building. Jack remained where he was. O'Reilly waited nearby. Several minutes later, the prince returned carrying a sealed envelope. He handed it directly to Jack. "In here is everything you'll need, the names, the locations, and the reasons. Use it to begin forming your plan." Jack accepted the envelope. The prince looked directly at him. "I believe you're more than capable of solving this particular problem for me." Jack slipped the envelope inside his coat. "I'll handle it." "Good." The prince smiled faintly. "Now let me not keep either of you any longer." He gestured toward the road. "A carriage will take you back into the city. From there, I assume the two of you can manage the rest yourselves." Both men nodded. A horse-drawn carriage approached moments later. The driver brought it to a stop before them. Jack and O'Reilly climbed inside. Soon the carriage was making its way down the road toward Valamerith. For a while neither man spoke. The wheels rolled steadily across the road. Eventually, O'Reilly broke the silence. "I wonder what that was really about, and what the prince's actual intentions are." Jack looked out the window. "Well, let's be honest. The prince is just as much of a mystery as the rest of us. But for Concordine's sake, we cannot afford to fail. After all, both of us have something against the slave trade and against nations that continue using those systems." O'Reilly nodded slowly. "You've never told me your story, and I've never told mine." A faint smile crossed his face. "I suppose neither of us plans on changing that any time soon." Jack gave a small, amused smile. "You're probably right." Then he looked toward O'Reilly. "Though there is something I'd still like to know." O'Reilly raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what would that be?" Jack leaned back slightly. "The weapon, the one the prince mentioned, what exactly is it?" O'Reilly chuckled quietly. "Well, I can only tell you so much, but let's just say the dwarves and I have been working on a weapon capable of firing far faster than any ordinary firearm, a weapon capable of sending a frightening number of rounds downrange within a single minute." He shook his head.
The concept works, the execution still requires refinement, but when it's finished, it will be something truly terrifying. Jack listened carefully. O'Reilly continued, "It isn't ready for production yet, and I have no intention of releasing something unfinished. I dislike incomplete work." Jack nodded. "On that we agree." The carriage continued through the city streets. Eventually, it arrived in Valamerith. The two men climbed out. They shook hands, then went their separate ways.
Jack eventually found Henrik and Lydia at the inn Henrik usually stayed at whenever he visited the city. The establishment overlooked the ocean. Several tables stood outside. From there, patrons could sit and watch the waves rolling across the water. Jack spotted the two immediately. Henrik was seated comfortably. Lydia sat nearby, completely focused on some kind of toy she had apparently acquired during the day. Every so often, she glanced out toward the ocean. Even now, the sight seemed to hold her attention. It was her first time seeing this place, her first time seeing a city like this, and judging by her expression, she was still trying to take it all in. Jack walked over. "Well, how was your day?" Henrik grinned. "Good, though I think someone may have enjoyed herself a little too much." He nodded toward Lydia. Lydia immediately lowered her gaze. Jack glanced toward her. The toy remained firmly in her hands. Henrik laughed. "To be fair, I don't think she's ever seen half the things this city has." Jack sat down. "Well, she spent 13 years surviving. It's probably the first time she's actually had the opportunity to be a child." For a moment, Lydia looked up, then quickly looked back down again. Still shy, still uncomfortable with attention, but there was a small smile on her face. Henrik studied Jack for a moment. "You know, for a man most people fear, you seem to have a soft spot." Jack looked at him. "Henrik, every man has a soft spot, but that same man also has a monster inside him, one ready to be let loose when necessary. That is the difference between a man who is in control of himself and a man who is reckless." Henrik gave a small nod. "Well, good to know." A moment later he asked, "I take it things went well with the prince?" Jack nodded. "Yes, they did. Though he seems impatient. He wants things to move faster." Jack tapped the envelope inside his coat. "And it seems the men he mentioned have already been prepared. They are apparently ready." Henrik raised an eyebrow. "I take it one of them is Goran." Jack glanced at the envelope. "Well, I haven't looked inside yet, so I can't confirm it, but I would assume Goran is one of them." Henrik chuckled. "Well, if we're going to be freeing a few slaves, he's exactly the man we'll need." Jack looked at him. "What do you mean by that?" Henrik laughed quietly. "Let's just say the man stands above almost everyone. When he enters a room, you'll know it's him. It almost feels as though doors are too small for him to walk through." Jack raised an eyebrow. Henrik continued. "And the man is built so broadly that he's almost wider than most doorways. Well, actually, he is wider than some of them. Despite that, he moves incredibly fast on his feet, and for someone his size, his capabilities are truly exceptional." Jack listened quietly. Henrik leaned back slightly. "Trust me, when you meet him, you'll understand exactly what I mean." Jack gave a faint smile. "I suppose I'll find out soon enough." Henrik nodded. "You will." Jack glanced briefly toward the ocean, then back toward the envelope. "Either way, we'll know soon enough." The waves continued rolling against the shore as the three remained seated outside, enjoying the ocean breeze. And for the moment, at least, the evening remained peaceful. Jack then looked at Lydia. "How was your day?" Lydia looked up at him. A small smile appeared on her face. "Very nice." I never saw the ocean before, and I'd never really eaten sweet cookies and things like that before. Jack nodded slightly. Well, we also need to get some books for you. First, the basics. Old stories. Stories of hope. Then we'll move on to something more interesting. Something that will help you better understand the world. A little philosophy. Lydia tilted her head. What is philosophy? Jack smiled faintly. Well, that's something quite interesting and quite useful. Understanding philosophy helps you understand how people think, why they do what they do, and sometimes why they make the mistakes they make. Lydia seemed to think about that for a moment. Before she could ask another question, Hendrik shook his head slightly. Well, Hendrik said, it's starting to get late. We should probably let them know what we want for dinner. Jack nodded. Find out if they have some chocolate cake or something similar. He paused. And I take it the room is where you usually prefer it, at the top? Hendrik nodded. Yes. Good. As Hendrik walked away, Jack turned back toward Lydia. There is also something else I need to do about that piece of you that's missing. Lydia looked at him. You can't find it. It's gone. Jack nodded. Perhaps. But here's a lesson. Sometimes the thing you replace something with isn't as good as the original, but finding a replacement can still make life easier. Lydia frowned slightly. What do you mean? Jack leaned back slightly. It means we need to teach you how to work with another type of arm, so that you can once again have two functioning arms. It won't be the same, but it will help. Lydia remained silent for a moment. Jack continued, and remember something else. His voice became calmer, more serious. The pain that happens to you shapes you, but you decide how it shapes you. Lydia lowered her gaze, quietly considering his words. After a moment, Jack stood up. Well, I take it you know which room is ours. Lydia nodded. Yes. Good. Let's go. I still have some work to do, and you should get ready for dinner. The two of them made their way upstairs. Some time later, Jack, Hendrik, and Lydia sat together on the balcony outside their rooms. The balcony overlooked the ocean. Far below, waves rolled against the shoreline. In the distance, the sun slowly descended toward the horizon. The sky had begun turning shades of orange, gold, and red. For a while, none of them spoke. They simply enjoyed the view. The cool ocean breeze drifted across the balcony. Not long afterward, there was a knock at the door. Hendrik stood and opened it. Several members of the staff entered carrying trays of food. They carefully placed the meals on the table before departing once again. The smell of freshly cooked food quickly filled the air. For a brief moment, the worries of plans, politics, war, and conspiracies seemed very far away. And as the sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon, the evening settled peacefully around them.